For calling the cops on my mother-in-law after a warning from my terrified daughter? My 6-year-old daughter told me, "Mom, we cannot go home today." Her face was pale, her hands clutching her backpack. At first, I thought she had had a nightmare or had only half heard something. Shortly after, I saw my mother-in-law enter my house with the spare key. I did not scream or run toward her. I stayed where Lily could see me, in a small coffee shop near the entrance to our gated community. And I watched long enough to understand that my daughter had not made anything up. I did not see the exact moment the fire started. I saw Patricia unlock my house, go inside without ringing the bell, and come out a few minutes later stiff, walking too fast. Then smoke appeared in the downstairs window. Then came the orange glow. That is when I finished my call to 911. For a long time I thought the people in this story were just tired, under pressure, or making bad decisions. After that day, I stopped trying to find other names for it. We lived in the Green Oaks Estates gated community in the suburbs near Denver, Colorado. It was a quiet complex with a security gatehouse, cameras, manicured planters, and neighbors who greeted you politely, though not always warmly. It was not a mansion, but it was one of those houses that gave the impression that everything was in order. That impression mattered a lot to Brian. My husband did not just want a comfortable house. He wanted a house that looked good when someone walked in. He worked in finance at a firm in downtown Denver. He had a good salary and a strange ability to sound confident, even when he was not saying much. He wore well-tailored suits and spoke with a calmness that made you think he always knew what he was doing. For years I wanted to believe it too. My name is Sarah Bennett. Although during my marriage, many people knew me simply as Brian Bennett's wife. Before Lily was born, I worked as a translator and interpreter. I liked conferences, meetings, headphones, and fast-talking clients, but between the mortgage, the baby, Brian's hours, and the idea that I could take on more of the household duties for just a little while, I ended up holding up almost everything else. First, it was not a burden. I felt like we were building something. Then I started to notice that the house looked fine, but we were no longer fine inside it. To understand what happened that Tuesday, I have to go back to the week before. That other Tuesday in October dawned mild. It was still early, before Lily's school started. Light streamed through the kitchen window. Outside, the planters were still damp, and you could hear engines starting, garage doors opening, and the first cars leaving before the main road became impossible. Lily came into the kitchen in her dinosaur socks, her hair a mess, a plastic triceratops in her hand. "Mom," she announced very seriously, "we have art today." "That sounds dangerous," I said as I put fruit and toast on a plate for her. "It is not dangerous," she replied, offended. "It is creative. The glitter never stays where it is supposed to," I told her. "Sit down." She laughed and climbed onto her chair. She was 6 years old, in the first grade, and already had strong opinions about almost everything. Brian came in a few minutes later. Iron shirt, dress pants, watch on his wrist. He looked put together, as if he had slept well, although I knew that was not always the case. He leaned down next to Lily and touched her foot. "Sock race," he said. Her eyes lit up. Delighted. Brian made a whole show of putting his on. Lily hurried, shouting that she was winning. He let her win, and she let out a loud laugh. I watched them, and for a moment, I wanted to believe the three of us were still okay in the kitchen before the day began. Then Brian's cell phone rang. His head snapped toward it immediately. It was not a normal reaction. It was as if he had been expecting bad news. He saw the screen, clenched his jaw, and put the phone in his pants pocket. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Work," he said quickly. Lately everything was work. Before, Brian was present in the mornings. He would joke, steal a piece of my toast, and say he was checking to make sure it was not poisoned. He would kiss Lily, kiss me, and leave the house in a different way, more relaxed, more like ours. But in recent months, he walked around the house in a hurry, as if his mind were always somewhere else. The long nights became normal. He would arrive after 10, sometimes after midnight. With his eyes too awake and his face too still, he would say something about closings, reports, or clients and go straight to the shower. One night, I hugged him when he came in and noticed a strange smell on his clothes. It was like smoke mixed with a cheap, sweet chemical air freshener. "What is that smell?" I asked him. "Nothing. They are renovating an office. It smells awful," he said. He changed the subject before I could press him. Then came the cell phone. He used to leave it on the kitchen counter. Now it seemed glued to his hand. If it vibrated during dinner, he would glance down immediately. If Lily asked him a question, he would answer distractedly. It did not happen overnight. It became noticeable in small things, especially with the phone in his answers, and in the way he avoided looking at me when I asked a simple question. First, I tried to talk. "Are you okay? How is work? Do you want to get away for a weekend, even if it is somewhere close?" Brian would smile a tense smile and say, "I am fine." It was the kind of, "I am fine" that really meant he did not want to talk, and for a while I stopped asking. It was hard for me to accept that it was not just exhaustion. You want to believe it is just a rough patch, that work will let up, that things will go back to normal if you do not push too hard. Then the first call came. It was an unknown number. I answered. A dry, low male voice said, "Are you Brian Bennett's wife?" I stood still. "Who is calling?" "Tell your husband we are tired of waiting," he said. "Tell him we remember." He hung up. I did not understand anything. When I told Brian, he turned pale for just a second. Then he let out a forced laugh. "It is a scam," he said. "They got data from some leak. Do not answer unknown numbers." I wanted to believe him. I really did, but the calls continued. They came at night when Lily was doing her homework, or when I was alone in the King Soopers aisle trying to look normal. Sometimes they said nothing. Sometimes all I could hear was breathing on the other end. Then the problem stopped being confined to my phone. There was a group chat for the first grade parents. They talked about homework, forgotten lunches, the school fair, and lost jackets. No one said anything too personal. It was one of those groups that seem harmless until they are not. One Wednesday, one of the moms posted a screenshot she had received from an unknown number. She asked if anyone knew anything about it. The screenshot read, "Parents, be careful. Brian Bennett owes over $200,000 and is asking for money to cover his debts. Do not lend him any. He is deceiving people." The mom deleted the message almost immediately. She apologized. She said she had gotten scared, but in a parent group chat, someone always manages to read it. I never knew how they got that mom's number. The chat went silent. My face felt hot, and my hands were shaking. I walked to the living room and saw Lily coloring, unaware that her father's name had just been exposed to her entire class. The next day, some of the moms gave me odd looks at the school entrance. They did not say anything. That was worse. That night, when Brian finally arrived, I showed him the screenshot. He looked at it without expression. For a moment, I thought he was going to tell me the truth, but he got angry. "They are putting pressure on me, Sarah," he said. "You have no idea what this is like." "Who is Brian?" His eyes changed. "Leave it. I am already figuring out how to solve it." "This already got to the school group chat," I told him. He clenched his jaw. "You are making everything worse," he said through his teeth. Lily came into our room around 9, dragging her plush stegosaurus. "Daddy," she whispered. "Will you read to me?" Brian barely opened his eyes. "Not tonight, Lily. I am tired." She stood there for a few seconds, then left without a sound. It was not fear yet. It was that discomfort of knowing something was wrong and not wanting to say it out loud. On Friday afternoon, I was packing Lily's backpack and preparing my everything is normal face to go to the school when the doorbell rang. It was Patricia Bennett, my mother-in-law, Brian's mother. Patricia never just dropped by. Patricia arrived, always put together, always measured. She was registered at the security gatehouse as an authorized family member. For years, we thought it was practical for any emergency. That day, I understood how easy it is to mistake habit for trust. She entered without waiting long. "Sarah," she said almost cheerfully. I was nearby. We lived in a gated community. Nearby was no coincidence. Patricia sat in my living room and did what she always did. Evaluate my marriage. Brian has too much on his plate, she said, stirring her teaspoon in her cup. Sometimes a woman does not understand the pressure a man is under. Then she looked at me with that calm of hers. And are you supporting him properly? There it was. I am doing everything I can, I replied. Patricia tilted her head. Sometimes men stay out late because they feel tension when they come home. To her, the problem was not the calls or the debts. It was my questions. I do not think Brian is coming home late because I asked about a threatening phone call, I said. Patricia's smile tightened slightly. If you pressure him, you will just push him further away. I waited for her to ask if Lily was okay. She did not. Then she said something that at the time seemed like just another of her phrases. Some things are meant to be discussed within the family. Sarah, you do not have to go around telling everyone everything. I did not answer her. I was afraid to answer her the way I wanted to. When I finally stood up to end the visit, Patricia touched my hand as if I did not understand. Just be discreet, she said. That is all. After she left, I stood in the living room. I had a bad feeling as if that visit had been a warning. I picked up my cell phone and opened the banking app. Brian was the primary account holder for the account where the mortgage and main expenses were paid. But for years, I had had access to check transactions and make household payments. The password did not work. I tried again. Nothing. I requested a password reset. The recovery email was sent to an address I did not recognize. I stared at the screen. Brian had changed the access. He was walling off a part of his life from ours. That same afternoon my phone rang. It was Allison, the wife of Jason, one of Brian's co-workers. I had met her at the company holiday party. And we had exchanged numbers once because her kids and Lily were similar ages. Sarah, I am sorry. I should not be calling you, but I am worried. What happened? I do not know exactly what is going on, she said. Jason is worried. Brian asked him and others at the office for money. There is also talk of sports betting. I do not have proof of everything. But what happened in the school group chat does not seem like just gossip anymore. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Why are you telling me this? Because if it were my husband, I would want to know, she answered. And because this has already affected other people. I later understood that they did not just want to collect from Brian. They also wanted to scare him. That night I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I stayed in the kitchen while he poured himself a glass of water, and I asked him one question. Are you gambling? Brian froze for just a second. It was noticeable. It was very quick, but it was there. No, he said sharply. Please, Sarah. Then explain why strangers are calling me. Explain why someone sent that to the school group chat. Explain why I cannot get into the house account anymore. His gaze went cold. Now you are checking up on me. I am not checking up on you for fun. Brian, they are already calling the house the school. I need to know what is going on. He set the glass down on the counter with so much force that the water sloshed. I told you I was going to handle it, he said in a low voice. Brian was making decisions without telling us anything, and they were already catching up to us. The following Monday, the eve of the fire, I saw him reviewing mortgage paperwork at the dining room table. He had bank statements, receipts, copies of the homeowner's insurance policy. When I got closer, he gathered the papers too quickly. What is that? I asked. Nothing. Just stuff for the home insurance, he said. The bank is asking for some updated information. I did not verify it. At that point, I still thought it was one thing for my husband to be acting strange, and another thing entirely for him to lie to me about everything. That night, I heard Brian moving around downstairs until after midnight. At some point he spoke on the phone. I was in bed awake, not daring to go down. I barely heard one word. Mom! Then he lowered his voice, and I could not understand anything else. The Tuesday of the fire dawned mild again. It was not raining. It was a normal Tuesday, no holiday or vacation. Shortly after 7 in the morning, that time when you think you can beat the traffic. Though in the suburbs near Denver, that is almost never true. Outside, the complex looked the same as always. Inside, the house felt heavy. I made breakfast. Lily ate slowly, quieter than usual. Brian barely touched his plate. He checked his phone once, muttered something, and checked it again. His leg was bouncing under the table. "I am driving today," he said suddenly, grabbing the keys. I usually drove. I would drop Brian off at the light rail station. From there he went downtown to the office. Afterward I would take Lily to school, and on some days I would stop by the King Soopers in the area. If we left late, the stretch toward the main road became a headache. But that morning he insisted. "Why?" I asked. "I have an early meeting. I cannot be late." His tone had that edge I already knew. The one that warned that any more questions would end badly, so I let it go. Brian drove as if someone were following him. He kept looking at his watch, his phone, the mirrors. Lily was in the back with a shiny keychain from a school fair. She was looking out the window without saying a word. We got to the station. People walked by with coffee cups and backpacks. Brian got out quickly. "Have a good day," he said over his shoulder. He did not kiss me. He did not look at Lily. I moved to the driver's seat. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. I started the car and then Lily spoke. "Mom," she said quietly. I looked at her in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were wide. "What is it, sweetie?" She took a deep breath as if it were hard to say. "We cannot go home today." I blinked. "What?" "We cannot," she repeated, her voice trembling. "Please." I stared at the mirror. "Lily, why are you saying that?" She leaned forward between the seats and lowered her voice. "I heard Daddy last night." "You were supposed to be asleep," I said. "Because sometimes you say foolish things when you are scared." "I was not. I woke up. He was in the hallway on the phone." "What did you hear?" Lily swallowed hard. "He said that after he dropped us off, someone had to go in." I gripped the steering wheel. "Someone who?" "I think Grandma," she said. "He said Mom." And then she said, "Patricia." I forced myself to breathe. "What else?" Lily started to cry silently. "He said you were going to drop me off at school and then go to King Soopers. And he said something about the wires." "What about the wires?" "I do not know," she murmured. "That it had to look like an accident, a short circuit or something. The house was relatively new. We had never had any electrical problems. Patricia, the visit on Friday, be discreet. She had not come to see how her son was. She had come to gauge how much I suspected. I did not argue with Lily. I did not tell her that maybe she had misunderstood. There was something in her voice that did not sound like imagination. It was fear, and it was too specific even with its fragmented pieces. "Okay," I said, making a huge effort to sound firm. "We are not going back." I drove back toward the community, but I did not enter with the car. I took side streets and parked in front of a small coffee shop, a few blocks from the entrance. The owner knew us by sight because I sometimes bought coffee there after dropping Lily off. "You are going to stay here with me, and you are not to leave my side," I told her. She nodded without asking, without complaining. That scared me more. We went into the coffee shop. I ordered a water I did not drink and asked Lily to sit at a table near the counter. I told the owner my daughter was scared and that I needed to make some calls. I did not step any further away than necessary. I could see her from the sidewalk through the window. I went outside and dialed Megan, a neighbor. "Megan. It is Sarah. I am sorry. I need to ask you something weird. If you see anything strange at my house, do not go near it. Just let me know." "What happened?" "I cannot explain right now. Just do not go near it." Our house was on the first street after the security gatehouse, on a short cul-de-sac. From an outside corner through the side fence, you could see part of the facade and the living room window. I could not see the whole house, just the entrance and part of the ground floor, but it was enough to know if someone went in. I waited. First, nothing happened. I started to wonder if I was letting fear get the best of me, if a part of me wanted to find proof that would force me to stop doubting. I thought about calling the security gatehouse, but if Patricia realized, she could leave or deny everything. Right then. I just wanted to keep Lily away, and understand what was happening without putting her in the middle of it. Then a gray sedan appeared and stopped in front of the security gatehouse. It was Patricia's car. They let her pass without a problem. Like always, she was authorized. I watched her drive down our street and park in front of the house. She got out and looked around quickly. She did not ring the doorbell. She reached into her purse and took out the spare key we had given her for emergencies. She opened the front door and went inside. I took out my phone and dialed 911. My fingers were trembling. When the operator answered, at first I did not know how to say it without sounding crazy. "I think they are going to start a fire in my house," I said. "My mother-in-law just went in with a key. My daughter heard something last night. I need a patrol car, please." The operator started asking for details. I gave the name of the gated community, the street, the house number. As I spoke, I never stopped watching the entrance. Patricia came out a few minutes later. She was not running yet, but she was not walking normally either. Stiff, clutching her purse to her body, she got in her car and drove off quickly. "She is leaving," I told the operator. "It is a gray sedan. It is Patricia Bennett." Then smoke appeared in the downstairs window, thin at first like a dirty shadow behind the glass. Then darker. "Do not hang up, ma'am," the operator said. Then I saw an orange glow. It was not a reflection. It was fire. I ran into the coffee shop, took Lily's hand and kept talking on the phone. "There is smoke now," I said. "I can see fire. Please send the fire department and a patrol car." "Is there anyone inside?" the operator asked. "No," I said. And that is when my voice broke. "We are not inside. My daughter warned me." I do not know how long it took. To me it felt like hours, although I later learned it had been only a few minutes. Firefighters arrived, patrol cars, neighbors coming out onto their sidewalks. Someone from the security gatehouse also started moving when they saw the smoke. Some were recording with their cell phones. A police officer approached me as the firefighters unrolled hoses toward the door. "Do you live here?" "Yes." "What happened?" I swallowed. I saw Patricia Bennett, my mother-in-law, open the door with a spare key. I saw her go in. She came out a few minutes before the smoke started. She left in her car. The officer looked at the house and then at me. "We need you to come with us to give a statement." Lily tugged on my sleeve. "Mom," she whispered. "We are okay." I knelt down and hugged her. "We are okay," I told her. "We are okay because you told me." She buried her face in my shoulder. Behind us, my living room was filling with black smoke. At the police station, they sat me in a small room that smelled of old coffee and stale air. Megan offered to stay with Lily for a while. She bought her juice and cookies from a nearby store and promised me she would not leave her alone. A detective named Harris came in with a notebook. "Mrs. Bennett," he said, "I need you to tell me everything from the beginning." And so I did. I told him about Brian coming home late, the phone glued to his hand, the strange smell, the calls, the screenshot in the school's parent group chat, Patricia's visit. I told him about Allison's call, the betting, and the money he had asked coworkers for. Then I told him about that morning. Lily, the key, Patricia, the smoke, the fire. Detective Harris wrote everything down. Occasionally he asked brief questions. "When was the last time you saw Patricia before today?" "Friday." "What did she say to you?" "She told me I should not make the house tense, that I should be discreet, that not everything needed to be told." Detective Harris's pen paused for a moment. "Did Brian recently mention any insurance?" I froze. "Yes," I said. "Last night. He was looking over the policy and mortgage papers. He said the bank was asking for updated information. Did you verify that?" I looked down. "No, because a part of me still trusted my husband." A while later, a fire investigator came in. He asked me about outlets, power outages, and problems with the wiring. "Nothing," I answered. The house had no issues. Later, another officer peeked in the door. "They have located Patricia Bennett," he said. "She is at her apartment. She will not make a statement without a lawyer." Detective Harris nodded. "And they located Brian at his office downtown. They are going to ask him to come in and give a statement." That day was just the beginning. The rest took months. A few hours later, I saw Brian in the hallway. He was with 2 officers, pale and disheveled. When he saw me, he raised his voice. "Sarah, please. Let me explain." I did not move. My house had been on fire. My daughter had trembled in my arms. His mother had walked out my door minutes before the smoke. "What did you do?" I asked. Brian swallowed. "It was not supposed to happen like this," he said. Detective Harris took a step toward him. "Brian, you can explain that to your lawyer." Brian tried to get a little closer. "I thought you would not be there," he said, his voice cracking. "I got in too deep. I did not know how to get out." "Who was threatening you?" He did not answer. Either he could not or he would not. They took him away. I thought about Lily, about her quiet little voice saying we could not go home. I thought about my daughter in the dark. Overhearing her father talk about something that could have put us at risk. Maybe Brian told himself we would not be there. But planning around our routine was already putting us at risk. There was no way to guarantee anything, not with a 6-year-old child. Schedules that sometimes changed, neighbors nearby, and fire. That day, I understood that Brian had woven our routine into his plan. The truth came out later in pieces. Brian had been gambling for about a year. He started with sports, small amounts. He won a few times, then he lost. At first he thought he could win back what he had lost. Then he was betting to cover the previous bet. He took out personal loans, used credit cards, got quick loans through apps. Brian was not a junior employee. He had a good salary, high-limit credit cards, and an image that opened doors for him. When he ran out of formal options, he looked for others. Between interest, favors, credit cards, loans, and money borrowed from unofficial sources, the debt was over $200,000. That is when the calls started. Detective Harris later told me that the message sent to the mom in the school group chat came from a prepaid phone. It was not a formal debt collector. It was someone reminding Brian they were watching him. Patricia tried to help him at first. She sold jewelry, used her savings, and covered what she could, but the debt grew too large. A debt like that could not be hidden for long, so they thought of the homeowner's insurance. It was not as clean a plan as Brian had imagined. The house already had a policy tied to the mortgage. He believed that if the fire looked like an accident, the insurance company would pay for the damages, the bank would be covered, and maybe there would be some money left over to appease those who were pressuring him. The idea was to start the fire and make it look like a short circuit. The plan depended on a routine. Brian would drop us at the station. Someone would see him there. He would continue to his office. I would take Lily to school and then go grocery shopping. Patricia would use the key, go in, start the fire, and leave. The house would be damaged, but according to them, no one would be hurt. That is what they said, although there was no real way to know. There was no guarantee that Lily and I would not come back early, that a neighbor would not go in to help, that the fire would not spread to another house, or that the smoke would not reach someone. Everything depended on all of us doing what we always did. They did not count on Lily having overheard. The district attorney's office did not take, "I thought you would not be there," as a defense. The security cameras at the gatehouse confirmed Patricia's entry and exit. They did not show what she did inside, but they placed her there minutes before the smoke. The expert's report ruled out an electrical short and found signs that the fire had been started deliberately. The following months were slow and tiring. Statements, expert reports, calls with lawyers, paperwork, more questions. I had to repeat the same story many times to different people in different offices. I also requested that it be legally established that Brian and Patricia could not approach Lily while the case was ongoing. Brian's lawyer tried to present him as a desperate man. Patricia's lawyer spoke of a mother's love and fear for her son. I listened to what was necessary and nothing more. I had already seen Patricia leave my house minutes before the fire and had heard Brian say he thought we would not be there. That was enough for me to know I was not going to make excuses for them. Some relatives asked me to think of Lily. I did not say much to them. For me, protecting her meant not covering up what had happened. Months later, Brian accepted his responsibility in a plea agreement. It was not a scene of repentance. It was a hearing, paperwork, lawyers, and a sentence that closed one part of the case. Brian received a longer sentence. Patricia was also convicted, although her defense managed to have her participation considered differently. They were not as many years as I would have imagined, but they were enough to get them out of our lives for a good while. The insurance part was much more complicated than Brian had imagined. The company did not resolve anything immediately. It investigated, sent adjusters, and reviewed reports, expert findings, cameras, and statements. The process was frozen while the criminal investigation moved forward. When the facts were established, the insurance company did not pay Brian as he had hoped. The only thing that moved forward was related to the bank, the mortgage, and the damages recognized after the investigation. There was no payout that would solve our lives. I got by as I could, with a small settlement, my few savings, work, and temporary help from Megan. I focused on what was in my name, on Lily's school, on moving, and on taking care of urgent matters. Not because I felt responsible for Brian's decisions, but because I wanted my daughter to be able to sleep without phone calls in the night. I wanted our future not to depend on those calls. We moved to a small apartment in Aurora, Colorado. It was not cheap, but it was doable. It did not have a security gatehouse or perfect planters, or a management that monitored the complex's aesthetic, just an ordinary building with ordinary noises. A neighbor who walked her dog every morning in her house clothes. It was not the house Brian would have wanted. I filed for divorce and started introducing myself as Sarah Bennett again. First, it felt strange to say it out loud. Then it started to come out without me thinking. I also went back to work. I started with remote translation and interpretation projects. It was not much money, but it was mine and it came from my work. Lily started a new school. I also sought counseling support for her. Children sometimes hold on to things you think they do not understand, and then they suddenly let them out in a small phrase. Sometimes when she thought I was not looking, she would look at the front door, as if to confirm it was still closed. One afternoon, several months after the move, she came home from school and dropped her backpack by the door. "Mom," she said suddenly with a smile, "I made a friend." "That is great," I replied, putting the mail on the table. "What is his name?" "Tyler," she announced as if it were important news. I smoothed her hair. "Do you like him?" Lily nodded vigorously. "He shared his cookies with me." "That counts for a lot," I told her. She laughed. For a moment everything felt simple. That afternoon was enough for me. That night she went to bed hugging her plush stegosaurus. I was turning off the light when she called me. "Mom? Are we safe now?" I stood still. I do not like to lie to my daughter, but I did not want to leave her with that fear. "We are safer," I said finally, "because now you can tell me anything, and I will believe you." Lily closed her eyes slowly. "Okay," she murmured. I watched her until her breathing became even. That night I could breathe a little easier. Not completely, but enough to turn off the light and sit in the living room in silence for a while. The hardest thing for me to accept was not just that Brian had lied to me. It was understanding that I, too, had taken too long to face what was happening. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.